Hi, my name's Scott Ripito. I'm the lead mentor for First Robotics Team 1477 Texas Torque. First Robotics is a competition where in January we find out what the game is. We have about 7 or 8 weeks to build a robot before we go to our first competition. That's the robot from this year's game down here. We'll talk about that a little bit in just a moment. So next slide. So we'll do some introductions here. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Sophia. I'm assistant mechanical lead.
My name is Sean. I'm a social media lead.
My name is William. I'm the business lead.
And my name is Justice, and I'm the lead programmer.
So a little bit of background about the team. The team was formed in 2004. I joined the team in 2007 because my son was on the team. And then in 2008, I started working with, I had an idea for the robot to do well. And so I got a lot more involved. And then around 2011, I became the lead mentor for the team. Go back one more. So we have a short clip to kind of show you what the game is like. So if you'll click on World Championship, you'll probably have to drag the video over. Okay, so this is our season wrap video from 2013 to give you an idea of what the game looks like and what goes into building a robot. So this is a lot of prototyping that we did right now. This is the shop where we used to work. We have a much bigger facility. So testing our elevator, that's shooting from the pyramid. It's one of at our first event. So the first 15 seconds of the game is autonomous, and so that little segment that just played, those robots were in control at that time. Then 2 minutes and 15 seconds is teleop, where it's a mixture of the robots controlling things and we're controlling things. So that's where we just qualified for the World Championship. And that's us with our alliance partners. If you look on the field there, you may have noticed there's a lot of Frisbees on the left side. That was our opponents. Not very many on our side because we were making them all. And these are the finals matches. So again, that's the autonomous time. That was a much younger version of me. Again, if you look on the field there were a lot of Frisbees on the right side, which was our opponents. And our role in that game was actually to go to that end, pick up those Frisbees and bring them back so that we ended up with more of their Frisbees than they did. So that's it. Thank you. So now, Justice, he's our programming lead. He's going to kind of demonstrate what the robot's capable of. This is our robot from the 2022 season. It's called Clutch or Nimbus, and the game was basically picking up these balls and shooting them into a goal that had a vision target on it. So this robot does have vision targeting and then climbing at the end. So go ahead, Justice.
All right, bear with me. I'm not a particularly great driver. Clear.
Kind of a warning to the people in the front row.
Yes, here I'll demonstrate our intake and picking up balls. So part of the game is we pick up balls off the ground, and now I'll demonstrate our shooter, which we use to, shoot the balls into the hub. And finally, I'll demonstrate the climber, which we use to basically climb monkey bars at the end of each match.
So one of the things Justice has been working on lately is automating that climb. Up until a week ago, we did all that manually. And so I mentioned that the robot's a mix of self-control and teleop, where he's controlling it. And that climb is one of those things. Another thing on this robot is there's something called snake eyes. We call it torque vision or torque light. And it tracks the target. And so as robot moves around, there's a photo-reflective target that it will track, and from that it will calculate how far to shoot, or what angle to shoot from, and what speed to shoot with. So, so the other things we're going to talk about, part of the agenda, strategies for success and areas. So you can go to the next slide. So, so I actually went around and asked some of the students what kind of things they thought led us to being successful. And so one of those was how well the team works together. Another one is inclusion, and I think, Sophia, you were going to say a couple of things about inclusion.
So in the STEM community, it's really important to make sure that everybody feels like they have a place and that they belong. And recently we had this competition where we had all of the drivers and people running the robot during the competition were women, just to make sure that they felt like they had a place on the team. And we did really good. We almost made it to the finals, and it was a really good experience. Just to make sure everybody felt nobody felt left out and everybody had a place.
So a couple other things, or a few other things up here. So our team is very much student-led, that they're making nearly all of the decisions. The way that we transfer knowledge from year to year is the veterans are teaching the rookies what to do, and that's something that we do in the off-season. The students are extremely dedicated. We're in the middle of summertime right now, and they're showing up from 4 to 7 on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they would be there more often if we would allow them to be, but we also have lives during the summertime. We also have this expectation that we're going to be successful. A lot of that stems from 2008 when we won our first 2 regionals, and then after that we just sort of expected that we were going to be doing that year after year. And so since 2008 we've been back to the World Championship 14 out of 15 years. And the students from 2010 really feel that, oh, we didn't make it that year. So it's something that they still kind of carry around with them. And then another program that we started, and something very important at first, is something called gracious professionalism, which is something that really resonates with me, and that's being able to compete with somebody and still respect them and even help them. And I think you see the same thing with the BattleBots competitors, is that they will offer assistance to other teams even though they're going to be competing against them later. And that happened to us at the Texas Robotics Invitational recently, where we were helping another team with their intake system, and then yes, they ended up beating us later, and that was the match that probably kept us from being on the #1 alliance. So anybody else have something to add?
Our social media campaign, #HowDoYouGP, is not only based around robotics, although it is a very prevalent thing within the robotics community. It is supposed to represent a sense of gracious professionalism, which is helping each other out, like Mr. Rip said, and being kind to the general community in whatever sport, whatever activity you're doing. And really what we do is we spread the hashtag, we create videos on social media and put it on different platforms to spread a sense of kindness throughout communities.
Yeah, so our social media, like Sean mentioned, hashtag HowDoYouGP, you can find it on Instagram primarily, where we create short interviews. We interview people around competitions, events, Comicpalooza, events we travel to, and what we want to do is we want to show how inclusive we are. We want to show that it's cool, it's fun to compete, but at the end of the day, we should show good sportsmanship, and that's really what it boils down to at the end of the day.
You know, one of the things I like to say is that we want to be the good guys when we're at a competition, and that people don't mind losing to us, which actually happened. We went to another event one time, and then the team there was the team that we had beat in the 2013 World Championship, and they were like, well, we're so glad it was you. And that's a great feeling to have, and we feel the same way about other teams that we know. So obviously building a good robot has a lot to do with being successful. So some of the items that the students brought up, and I'll just run through these very quickly and then let them comment on those. But we really look at maximizing our score, how we're going to score as many points as possible. Then we do prototyping, but we want the prototyping to be useful. So we just don't want to build something to show that it can be done. We want to build something where we can take measurements and then use those in the actual design of the robot. We have sub-teams, so the students are divided into groups such as programming, which Justice is the lead for, and CAD and mechanical and electrical, and by having those sub-teams and having them train their people, I think we have a higher level of success in those groups. We do CAD, so computer-aided design. This robot was 100% built in SolidWorks before it was built in real life. We have a design review process, so we're always looking at ideas for designs, and before we start cutting those parts and making that subsystem, we want to check it and make sure that it makes sense. We still build 2 robots. That's kind of a holdover from an old rule, but we're still doing that because by having 2 robots, we get 1 robot to our programmers and drive team and electrical group very quickly, and then the other robot we can still be iterating on, making improvements, which leads to the next item, the iterating to improve. We have to make sure we leave time for driver practice. I've been doing robotics since about 1995, and that's probably the single most important thing you can do for your team is to make sure they have time to drive the robot and get used to it. Something that we're not very good at, but we did have more time this year, and that's leaving time for wiring and programming. And then another one that people don't think about very often is that when you're making changes to the robot to try to make it better, only change one thing at a time. Because if you're changing multiple things, you don't know which one of those changes made the improvement. So just change one item, and we like to try to keep things simple also, so that's another part of this for me. Things y'all would like to add?
One thing I'd like to elaborate on is the importance of iteration in our design process. Since we built 2 robots, we have at least 2 versions of every subsystem. That's really crucial in sort of sorting out kinks for things that we do not expect. And that was one of our pitfalls at our first event this year, is we put a part on the robot that wasn't prototyped on our first robot, and that was the only part that really caused us major issues at that event. The shooter's been through about 4 iterations. The intake's on its 3rd iteration, and the climbers had a lot of iterations to parts throughout the season. Really, the only thing that stayed the same has been the drive base. So I'd also like to touch on when he was talking about the importance of getting time to programming and testing things once at a time. In programming, I got this question yesterday, how long does it take to program? Well, to get base functionality, very little time. We can pretty much get the robot moving in a matter of hours. However, to make it where we can be effective on the field and the driver isn't having to control every single part individually, we have to start grouping things into little autonomous routines, basically. So currently, as the robot stands, there's really 4 controls the driver has to worry about. The drive-based controls, which are on the sticks of the normal Xbox controller we use. We use one button to actuate the intake so we can pick up balls, another button to do the shooting routine so we can target and shoot the balls, and another button which goes through our auto climb sequence. And using those 3 buttons, we can sort of minimize what the driver has to think about, and they can focus on actually driving and the strategy during the game.
We also have manual backups for a lot of those systems, so in case something does go down, that they can operate it manually. For example, the climb, we can do completely through a manual system. So some other factors that make a difference, one of them happens to do with budget and spending money. It's really the top 2 there. When you work within a school district, a lot of times it's very difficult to spend money and to spend it quickly. But when you're building a robot in 8 weeks, you have to spend it quickly. And so for that reason, our team started a 4-H organization so that we could have our separate account at a bank for spending money. And we found a method to work with the school district that we can kind of replenish that over time. And so it's been working out really well for us. And then also with procurement is being able to get parts in a timely fashion. So I find I'm reminding students a lot, what do you need for this next section? Because they're kind of sequential. Like, I got to get this done, then this and this. And you have to look ahead, and you have to be doing things in parallel, multiple things at once. So, there's 2 hooks here. They could be repairing both of them at the same time, but often you'll see one person doing one and then they're waiting until they get to the next one. It doesn't have to be like that. Another thing that makes us successful are awards. We win a lot of other awards besides just robot-related awards. And by doing that, that helps us qualify. In fact, we would not have qualified for the World Championship if it weren't for winning chairman's at off-season or district event earlier, or engineering inspiration. We also won an award for programming and controls, innovation and control at the district championship, and without that we wouldn't have advanced. So we were very close to not advancing to the World Championship this year, and it's because of all those other things that we do that we did advance. And then we do a lot of stuff in the off season. So right now, as Justice said, this intake's not the intake that we use during the regular competition. That's something we're working on in the off season. The climbers being upgraded. We've done some things with the shooter routine and programming. And so we have lots of projects going on year round, and that's to keep our students sharp and to provide training opportunities for the students.
Yeah, so on the topic of awards, when we were at the World Championships, we actually won what's known as the Gracious Professionalism Award. And one of the things that got us to the World Championships in the first place was the tremendous amount of help that we received from other teams. And I like to say that if you don't know how important good sportsmanship is, you don't really think about it too much until you haven't actually been shown good sportsmanship. You've been shown bad sportsmanship. And one of the experiences we had on the way to qualifying to the World Championships this year was at Waco, which was our first competition we went to as part of the 2022 season, where leading up to the finals, our robot actually had an electrical error, and which would have delayed us from performing. So another team, I think it was 118 or 148, yeah. So they actually called a timeout on our behalf to help us and go over to our pits, our personal area, and help us fix it and as fast as we can. And at the end of the day, we got to perform. And even though we lost, we still feel really thankful for what they were able to do for us.
Yeah, Team 148 was actually our opponent, and we had already used our timeout, and so they called a timeout for us to be able to make the repair.
And when a lot of people think about robotics, they think about the very technical and physical part of the robot, which is very important, obviously, to robotics. But another important thing in robotics is business. Business is something that, like, for example, how do you GP is pure business, and really, like William was saying, good sportsmanship. I mean, that's business. A lot of social, a lot of what's it? You need to socialize a lot in robotics. You can obviously perform, and you can perform well, but what's going to make your team known, what's going to help you get a good reputation and let others know about your team is sharing and being and having a business around your robot and team.
So another thing I'd like to touch on, kind of on the technical side, is the importance of sort of doing research and development during the off season. We use the off season basically where we have a time where it's much more okay to fail, and failing is a really, really important part of the process because that's the era of trial and error, and you really can't get anywhere without that. So we do things like trying out this drive base here that we use. This is the first time we've ever used this type of drive. It's called a swerve drive, in where it's basically a shopping cart, sort of, where all the wheels kind of move independently. That allows us to be able to rotate and drive. Anyways, we used our entire last off season in programming dedicated to teaching ourselves how do we run that type of drive base effectively. And for example, like he said earlier, we're using this time for the auto climb sequence and for improving our shooting routine. We used it to build that camera, and as well as getting rookies involved, because most people join during the off season. I joined 1 year ago during the off season, and that's how we're able to move people up pretty quickly, as we have this time where we're not super focused on a high-risk situation.
Yeah, we're doing a new swerve drive in the off-season too. Last slide, or next to the last. So just some areas where we need to do a little bit more work to improve our chances of making it back to the championship. Alliances, we're really looking at alliances with other teams to kind of share ideas. That's already happening in the FIRST community. There was a group called the Open Alliance Project, and so all these teams are sharing kind of what they found out as they test different subsystems. Teams always need more mentors, so if there's a FIRST team in your area, they would love to have you, no matter what your skill set is. And then just for us, that our training program's pretty solid, but I think we need to do a better job of documenting it so that we can more easily recreate it in future seasons and not just rely on the skill of the students that are doing it. So I think that's all we have, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have. That's my contact information, so if you want to know more, you could always contact me. Below that's our team website, and then below that is the website for FIRST Robotics in general. Any questions? Yes, Jim. Jim, I can't hear you. Yeah, what Jim just said is about needing more mentors. There's one of the hardest things about FIRST is finding mentors and then keeping them with your team. And so if there's if you kind of look in your area and find out if there's a team, you could be helping with technical stuff, you could be helping with finance, you could be helping with outreach, like we consider this an outreach event, getting information about FIRST out to the public. Helping with Chairman's Award, all kinds of activities beside building a robot. And I kind of think of our team as partly a business, and so anything you think a business might have, our team probably has it, like a media group, and they do videos, they do photos, and all kinds of stuff. So. And if you need help finding a team, you can do it at firstinspires.org. You can actually search by zip code if you like, or you could just contact me and I can definitely find a team for you to work with. Okay, well that's all I have, so thanks for your time.